Are you recording? I'm recording.
Now I'm push the button. And I see that it is functioning properly.
And in fact, I have already made the thing go live. Ba-ba-ba. Oh, for once, there's no one watching. I guess I tweeted at the last second. Usually, a bunch of people are watching by now.
Is there an opening bit of any
I
kind?
got an opening bit.
I guess I could talk about the dishwasher again, but I guess I'll hold it because the dishwasher story will progress.
I mean, mine is biking related.
Okay.
So, GeekNights is back on its bullshit, I guess.
Warm today.
Actually,
I could do a warm today.
You want to do a warm today? We did that.
Very brief warm today.
That works, because that actually segues into the biking conversation I want to have. I just want to really quick check the weather for the weekend. Because fucking goddamn it, thunderstorms again.
Yep.
I want to go camping.
Can't fucking
this
do anything because
every weekend
thunderstorm.
Yeah. So this is an aside before we start the show. Remember how over the years there were multiple summers where it would be like perfect beach weather all week, and then it would be rainy and shitty on the weekend, and then be perfect again all week? There is real evidence that pattern is common in cities due to car air pollution specifically, and the patterns of commuting. So the only reason we had such great weekends last summer is probably because there were a lot less cars. But now New York City car traffic is the worst it's ever been in history.
Yep.
Yep. That's actually part of my bit. God damn it, thunderstorm.
That's why we got to go to a beach far away from a city. Well, not a problem there.
In a month, almost exactly, we will do so.
There is. I checked. I got to figure. There's an Enterprise rent-a-car on Rio Grande, like inwards, away from the water. So I don't know if I can like drop a car off there, get some kind of ride to the beach.
If you need a ride to the beach, I can come pick you up. Like that's.
I don't know. We'll see if that's a viable thing.
Because I'll be there with the car. Skojo will be there with the car.
It's the timing is the issue.
Right? Yeah. One-way rentals.
On the weekends, the Enterprise rent-a-cars are only open from 9 a.m. to noon. They're barely open on the weekends.
That is the thing that has annoyed me forever about renting cars.
If I try to get back to the city, it's like, well, okay, I'm back here. If I don't get back to the city by noon on Saturday, I'm keeping the car till Sunday.
You know what I used to do? So the places I rent from aren't open at all on Sunday. So fuck you, bring it in Monday on your way to work. And they usually don't allow drop-offs in the city, like places outside
you should
the city.
You should do the Enterprise one that's right near us. You can just walk there.
Well, until we got the car that we have now, there is an Enterprise right next to my apartment, like right near the apartment. That's
the one I've been going to.
That's the best one. That's the one I've been using.
That's the one.
That opened relatively recently.
I think what I'll probably have to end up doing is just paying for the whole week, which means we're just in order to save money. And leave really early on Saturday, the checkout day, so that I can get back there by noon.
Yeah, I sort of plan on
leave because nothing's gonna happen Saturday, right? So it's just I'll leave ridiculously early on Saturday, which will probably make it'll be so early the road will be empty too, right?
Yeah.
So
I did that once. Remember that one year where my fucking boss made me come back into work? So we were in Wildwood, and I had to go back home for the day after the 4th of July. It was years ago. So I got up at
I remember the details like that.
Yeah, so anyway, I got so you all stayed. You all stayed an extra day. Went back when we used to do like longer trips there. And I just got up at like 6 a.m., got on the road. I made it to work in Yonkers in like record time. There was nobody on the road.
Yeah.
And I went straight into work.
Saturday, I'll be going the opposite direction of everyone else.
Exactly.
So I think that's what we'll probably do is we'll just get a car. We'll get it on early the first Saturday, right? We'll get down there as quickly as we can, park it, not use it again until leaving very, very, very early on the following Saturday.
Yep.
And that will cost probably $700, which is much cheaper than owning a car.
I mean, I pay $200 a month for my parking space.
Yeah, unless we can find some other.
Oh, another thing I learned. I want to find a better article about it, but just keep this in the hopper for later. All that flooding that happened during the rain, you know what seems to have caused it in New York City?
There's
all over Manhattan and Queens and the Bronx.
Okay, the New York City flood.
Yep.
Okay.
The answer is
clogged drains.
When they cut alternate side street parking to be less often and they sweep the streets left, that's the primary reason all the flooding happened.
Yeah, the drains are clogged. Yeah.
Yep. Turns out all the people who said that it was better for the city to do it less often were 100% wrong. And we got to bring it back.
We've seen YouTube drain cleaning guy. We know.
All right, I'm just gonna start. You're recording, I assume.
Yeah, I've been recording. This
Okay.
whole time.
Yep. Okay. Da-da-da. And all right, we just put a little M for metadata. It's Thursday, July 15th, 2021. I'm Rim.
Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we're talking about counterfeits, bootlegs, and illegitimate goods. All right, whenever you're ready.
All right. Warm today.
Warm indeed.
Finally a warm day, but of course it's a day where I gotta fucking work and I can't go to the beach or whatever.
Yep, but at least so in pre-COVID times, like I would bike to work unless I had to like be dressed up extra fancy for like a special meeting or something. I'd bike to work every day using my own bike. But in COVID times, it once I start like nowadays, it's kind of a pain in the ass with all the protocols they've got at work to like bring my bike and use the bike loading dock. So I've been using the city bikes instead of, taking my real bike. Also because my building, like years ago, people freaked out about, I guess, theoretically, supposedly, someone's bike got stolen from the bike room, which frankly, I don't even care. But because of that, the building, like, I have to talk to the doorman and they have to like buzz me in, and it's also a pain in the ass. So the city bike's just better. But because it's so hot, I've been using those e-bikes pretty much every day to and from work. And I got to say,
the e-bike, I've never used the e-bike. I just keep using the regular one. Why would I pay money for the e-one?
So the reason I use the e-one is only for commuting. Is that, and usually I actually only use it on the way to work. On the way home, I use a regular bike. Because biking,
I got nothing against the E1. It's just I don't need to use the E1. I can use the regular one.
Oh, yeah.
So why
I could, but I'm usually wearing like pants and a real shirt because I'm going to an office.
Why are you wearing pants and a shirt when it's warm?
Because of the kind of job I have. So I can't like.
I would just show up in shorts and t-shirts.
So we're riding a regular city bike. I'll be a little sweaty coming into work, and I don't always want to be. But the thing about the e-bike, I realized that taking it to work, it costs about half what a MetroCard swipe would, and it is $5.
Well, that's on top. The price. If you didn't have the annual pass, it wouldn't cost.
But I have the annual pass because I use regular city bikes all the time in my regular life. So it's basically free because I'm paying for it anyway. But the e-bike is just objectively better than the subway unless it's raining. Or like super cold.
As long as you're going somewhere the subway goes.
Yeah. So basically
or somewhere the city bike goes. The subway goes more places than city bike does.
Yep. So I'm using these e-bikes to go to work so I don't have to huff and puff with a giant fucking city bike over the Queensboro Bridge.
Another way to avoid huffing and puffing is just bike slower.
No, I'm not willing to do that.
You seem to be incapable of doing
No, fuck that. If I'm not going like 15 miles an hour, I'm not happy.
I just go doot 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 doot.
You've seen my Stravas when like Emily and I are out joyriding. It's
I just go doot 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 doot.
So in the last 3 times I have gone over the Queensboro Bridge on my way to or from work. So yesterday coming home, today going to, and today coming home. I want to see what your guess would be. How many times was I passed on the Queensboro Bridge by a motorcycle that was gasoline powered in the bike lane?
Probably at least 5 or 6 times.
Exactly 6 times.
All right. Yeah, they use them all the time.
They got to do something about that, especially considering that traffic in New York City is literally the worst it's ever been in history right now.
I mean, listen, it's like, yes, I agree. Technically, you're not supposed to be using, that vehicle should be in the driving area and not in the bike.
I'm like e-bikes, I'm totally cool with, but gas-powered 2-stroke engines should not be in that space.
Yeah, of course, you're right. But that problem is so insignificant compared to the
cars in the first place.
Right. That person is there not because you're punishing that person. It doesn't help you, right? That person is there because a car has pushed them there. They feel safer in there than they do over with the car.
So the problem though, so
punishing them does nothing, right?
So here's these are not,
if cops were good and were, it's like, there's no point.
So here's the thing though, these are not like these instances. I'm not talking about like little putt-putt, like the kids who like, but what happened to me 3 times just recently, one of them was on my way home just now. It was a full-size motorcycle honking and like driving fast on that bike lane.
Yeah, but that if the cars were lessened, that person wouldn't be there.
I don't know, actually.
I don't blame that person. That's such a small, insignificant problem compared to the how many lanes of cars are over there.
Well, we got to get rid of all those lanes of cars.
That's what I'm saying. That's the real problem. I'm not gonna go be blaming like this, sort of side effect. That's like one motorcycle guy when there's thousands and thousands of cars right fucking there, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But it is a very narrow path. Granted, that'll be a little less bad when they actually make it bikes only and get rid of the pedestrian access, which is supposedly coming this year.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, there was actually some things going around recently. One of them was like, look, evidence shows in this, one study each, but whatever. One study was like, increasing cop enforcement doesn't actually reduce the number of crashes.
Oh, yep.
Right?
Because I saw a bunch of other articles talking about that.
And the second one was like actually camera enforcement that's on all the time and just tickets every single person does.
Yeah, I mean, it's very. Think about even from a naive analysis. Think of it this way: what percentage of people who are flagrantly violating very objectively easy to observe traffic rules like running stop signs and red lights don't get ticketed because there isn't absolute enforcement? So the odds are you'll get ticketed so infrequently that there's no deterrent effect.
So this is why I say you should defund the police, which don't increase safety.
No, real simple. Yeah, like I said, every stop sign and red light in New York City should have 100% enforcement with no exceptions via technology, and the police should not be able to chase anyone or interact with someone in person for those violations. They're just mailed tickets.
And the penalties, right, should not be, just these fines, right? Because a fine is a price. It means a rich person can still do it, right? The penalty should be you're not allowed to drive ever again, and we confiscate all your cars, and you're not allowed to buy a car. And if we catch you driving, then we kill you. I don't know. So something horrible that would make you, I don't know. I don't know what to do about someone who has lost their license.
This is something, I don't know if it's still true, but I remember, growing up in Michigan, most people who were getting pulled over for drunk driving had suspended licenses for drunk driving, and they just keep driving, and no amount of consequences will stop them from driving, short of putting them in jail.
Well, I mean, that's the fault. They're living in Michigan.
Take away their car, they get another car.
Yeah, they have that person. It's not their fault. I mean, they shouldn't be drunk driving, but it's not their fault. The fault is they're stuck in a place where if they don't have a car and drive, they can't go anywhere.
Yep.
Right.
But they also choose to drive drunk so frequently that they get pulled over repeatedly.
Right. So any consequence that you administer by pulling them over or ticketing them, right, is not worse than the consequence of you can't go anywhere.
Yep.
Right. So in order to make them, it's like, you either have to have make it a place where they can go places without the car. Then they'll be like, oh, okay, why would I,
All right, we'll just get on that with a deadlocked, impossible to change Senate and the 40 years of infrastructure investments necessary to do that, even just in the orbit of major cities, not counting the rest of the country.
If you had some fucking guts, like some people from Texas have some guts, right? Then maybe something would happen.
Yeah, actually, that's the news we could talk about. So if you're not aware, American politics is, of course, super fucked up. We basically have fascists on one side and a coalition.
It's been super fucked up. It's just, there's more realization and, consequences of the fucked upness happening, right?
Yep. But one thing that's happened specifically,
at what point was it not fucked up,
and recently, and this is kind of this is the kind of thing that when people say. A lot of Americans who are on the left and the reasonable positions also don't understand our government that well. So they'll get mad, like, why doesn't Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, do X? Or why doesn't the President, Joe Biden, do Y? And usually the answer is, that's not actually within their powers. That's not something they can do.
It's within their power if they act in a Trumpian way and just ignore what's within their power.
No, because there's a fundamental problem there. The Trumpian way was usually preventing something from happening or making something happen badly. Making something actively happen is usually not possible. And that's sort of the word. It just so happens that the bad side in America almost exclusively wants to prevent things from changing or break things. So
let's at least find the things that we want to stop from happening and stop them from happening, right?
Yeah, and that's actually, I think Biden signed more executive orders than like any modern president.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
he's doing what he can.
you know.
But when people say like, oh, why don't the Democrats do the crazy option? They kind of already are in many cases where like the crazy option, they're doing as much as they legally can, and they're not at the point where they're going to start throwing bricks. So in the state of Texas, which is a fucked up state that was formed due to a land grab where we basically stole a bunch of land from Mexico in order to protect slavery, and the Alamo is a farce. But I digress. Is going to pass extreme voting restrictions, like the kind of voting restrictions that arguably end democracy in Texas and threaten the ability of like a Democrat to ever win a statewide election, all sorts of nonsense. The Democrats in the state legislature of Texas are doing the crazy thing. What they did is they fled the state. They went to D.C. and they're in hiding. So now the state legislature cannot have a quorum to vote on this bill that will destroy democracy, and they're paralyzed.
They also can't change. They don't have enough people to change the rules about quorums.
Exactly. So the consequence of this, though, is that those Democrats will be arrested if and when they ever return to Texas. The governor has actually ordered their arrest because their governor is a super piece of shit fascist who really wants these voting restrictions to be in place. So that is the level of politics we've got going on in America right now. I'm not going to give you the play-by-play of that whole story, but I highly recommend you read about that in particular because that's the kind of activism.
You could do a similar thing in the U.S. Senate if some Republican senators just couldn't find their way to the Senate somehow.
Yeah.
Suddenly, there just happened to be, what is it, 10 we need missing? 10, I think, to get 60?
So it's a little bit...
11?
Quorum in the
12?
Senate is a little more complicated, but you effectively need 60 affirmative votes to bring something forward.
Right. Okay. So you got what? At least 48, right? So let's get 12 just to be safe. 13.
Yep.
How hard is it for 13 old white dudes to have a hard time? Right? How hard can that be to arrange? When you say, command the largest military on Earth and a secret service and, let's actually, people always spread these conspiracies. Why not do a real if you can have a CIA, start a bunch of revolutions, everyone know you done it, but there's no consequences.
I'll
have a CIA, delay 13 old white dudes. Everyone knows you did it, but no consequences. Right?
wait till they go poop because they probably all poop at the exact same time every day, and you just lock them in the bathroom.
Aren't even your country.
Just tell you, wait till they poop at their scheduled time and lock them in the bathroom.
Yeah. Anyway.
But if you live in America and you're not in Texas, your local politicians, they're the ones you can pressure to do this kind of shit because usually there are a lot more interesting loopholes to exploit at the state and municipal level than there are at the federal level.
In the exact spot where I live, every single small representative that I have is already about as left as can be.
Yep.
I'm represented in the state by outright socialists.
I mean, even at the federal level, Maloney, my rep, not the most progressive, but also going hard against the Republicans. Like she's not bad.
She's one of those. Well, she's one of those ones where she sort of goes with she went with the flow, right? She saw things moving to the left, and she moved to the left. Right?
You know what? I don't care why someone gets there. They just got to get there at this point.
We're still voting against her in the primary.
Oh, of course. I mean, I will always vote for...
There's an actual socialist who's trying to primary her.
I will always vote for the most radical progressive in any primary because why not? Worst case, they don't get the nomination. And also, as the number of people who vote that way in the primaries grow, that pulls the rest of them a little bit further.
But there's no point in me calling any of my at least smaller... I guess I can call the state senators.
But that's the problem. We live in... if you live in a state that's doing okay... you have no influence on the federal government because a senator in America from a state you don't live in not only gives zero fucks what you think, but if you call them, they will use the evidence that people from out of state are calling them as an excuse to ignore popular will and actually do the thing that's unpopular.
It's like what if I call Schumer? What he's like, okay, yes,
yeah. No, I think I wrote a letter to Schumer a while ago. I was mad about like something I wanted a January 6th commission, and his response was basically, "So do I."
Mm-hmm.
I co-sponsored all these things that you want. Here you go.
Keep voting for me.
Yep. And before anyone says, well, why don't you move to West Virginia? No one should have to move to a shitty place to make the place they live better.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, you got some news about bowling balls, it looks like here.
I do. So apparently in New York, people, I don't know if you haven't heard about the world of recycling, right? But there's plenty of exposés out there you can read about the realities of recycling in various places and how a lot of stuff you recycle just ends up in the trash, et cetera, right? Industry is really responsible for climate change more than we are, et cetera, as consumers, yada, yada.
Yep.
But this particular story, right, was quite interesting from a different angle, is that at the recycling center in New York City, a few bowling balls show up about every day, right? Just a few bowling balls a day. So like 1,000-something, 1,200-ish balls a year they get there, right? People think they can recycle a bowling ball. You got this bowling ball, right? Maybe it's broken. Maybe you just don't use it anymore. You can't sell it. You can't give it away. And you feel bad just throwing it out because it's such a large, heavy, not necessarily inexpensive object.
Nah.
Right? And it's like, so you recycle it to feel better about yourself, but they can't fucking recycle the bowling ball. So they got too many fucking bowling balls there. And then, so it's like, I just think that's really fascinating because it always reminds me of my often repeated anecdote about the bowling ball, where my friend Zach bought the bowling ball. You think you're going to get involved in some hobby, right? And then you don't. And now you've got this hobby equipment that you bought that you don't use, right? Lying around. And I always say, don't buy a bowling ball. If you're going to buy equipment for your hobby, make sure you're actually going to do that hobby. And you're not just going to buy a bicycle and not ride it. That would be a bowling ball, metaphorically speaking. And here's literal bowling balls showing up at the recycling center, 3 a day, right? So people are making this mistake en masse, right? Of buying hobby equipment and not using it. And yeah, it was fascinating because in the article I learned about bowling balls and how like the ultra bowling balls like only get so much use. Like the ultra pro ones, and there's really good ones, but they crack. So the pros keep going through ball after ball. How they make the bowling balls without holes, and then you buy a bowling ball with no holes in it, and then they drill the holes for you, right? So then it's like, well, now it's got the holes in it. You can't like give it to someone else. It's your ball now. It's for your hand.
Yep. Granted, I just used alley balls. They were fine. Not that I was a particularly good bowler.
I used those too. I've never owned a bowling. My parents owned bowling balls. I didn't. I never owned one. But I was thinking, right? Oh, what if I went to that recycling center and I got the bowling balls? They're basically going to give it to me for free, right? The problem with recycling is that they can't sell the stuff to anyone, right, at a reasonable price. But I could get the bowling balls, 3 bowling balls a day, and then I bet I could set up an installation at some museum or gallery that's like a mountain of bowling balls, right? And it would have so many meanings to it artistically, right? It's like, the story that I tell of the bowling ball, the trash. I'd be like, this is how many bowling balls are attempted to be recycled each year, right? Look at how many there are, 1,200 bowling balls in a pyramid, right? Whoa, right? It would also be fucking cool, bowling ball pyramid. All the different balls, all the different colors, that were involved in it, right? Maybe I could mix some pins in there, who knows?
I can imagine a lot of uses for a lot of bowling balls, many of which are illegal.
Yeah, it would be sort of like, that Ai Weiwei one, all the bicycles in the big tower, but kind of like that, right? So I was like, yeah, I should do that. And then I realized, wait a minute. Even if I get a gallery to agree to accept my installation, and even if I can construct the installation, right?
Are you going to bike over there on a city bike and pick up 3 bowling balls a day?
I got it every fucking day. I'm going to go down there and get bowling balls, which weigh a fuck ton. And where the fuck am I going to put them in the meantime?
So you set one in the front of the city bike.
Even if I get it, I imagined like I get a mini storage container, right? And I put up 3 bowling balls in it. Then I put 6 in. And eventually they're so high that when I open the container, they fall on me and I die.
But Scott, that moment when they find your body is the true installation. That's the art.
It'd just be me at the mini store.
You know what it is?
You know what it is? Door, buried in bowling balls with my body bruised severely.
And the exhibit is called The Individual Responsibility. That is exactly that, the individual trying to take responsibility for these massive problems as opposed to systemic solutions will in fact just kill the individuals and not solve the problem.
Yeah, I also saw a tweet today that showed a mudslide in California or someplace, and it was a Prius was being washed away in the mudslide, and it's like, yep, and, you buying the hybrid or electric car is not going to make up to solve the climate change, right?
Yep.
Everyone having no car, that will solve it. Right?
Yep. Even just having slightly better mass transit in like the 4 biggest cities in America would have a measurable impact.
Yep. Anyway.
So,
it was just it's an
this is a
article,
fascinating
small,
article. It's long
fascinating
too.
article, but it has there's a lot to say.
I didn't know about those reactive balls at all, and that's a whole topic.
It spoke to me personally. This article.
Yeah. Not that I ever particularly want to bowl again. I feel like most people who end up bowling in America in the year of our Lord 2021 are there because someone else thought a bowling party would be a good idea, and everyone showed up because no one wanted to say, no, we don't like
People are in
bowling.
the bowling league. There's bowling league people.
Yeah, but I don't feel like that is a growing hobby. I'm not sure.
It seems holding steady.
Yeah, it's holding steady.
Yes.
Ping pong was rising for a while, but it seems like it hit its plateau.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, in some other news, this is kind of relevant to our main bit, but a doctor in Napa, out in California, it looks like the DOJ went after them because they were faking vaccinations. Now, this isn't like someone who just like prints out an image of the vaccine card and writes some bullshit on it to try to pretend they got vaccinated. This was a doctor selling vaccination cards that they had filled out legitimately to make it officially look like this person had been vaccinated when they were not.
Obviously, this person was caught, and now they're not a doctor anymore, right?
Yep. This has happened a few times already, but
it's Dr. Nick out here.
The reason I want to link to this article is because this is why homeopathy and chiropractic and acupuncture and all that bullshit is so harmful to society. You can make a straight line from the deregulation of those industries in the 90s to the rise of fascism in America today. Not all the rise of fascism, but like bring an elevation of the rise, like an acceleration. Because if you look at this story, which is typical of this kind of story, you always wonder, like, so what? Does this doctor, are they crazy? Do they just think the vaccines are fake and they're trying to help people? No. I'm going to read the money line, say the line part from this article. Quote, the doctor is also accused of selling her patients what she called immunization pellets that she said contained small amounts of COVID-19. She falsely claimed that those pills would give people immunity from the coronavirus. So whenever someone is doing this kind of crap, they're rarely doing it because they actually believe that the vaccines are dangerous. Usually, they are selling some sort of supplement or natural medicine scam, and this is just part of their marketing. This is how they sell this bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, also, the Surgeon General, today, right, did a whole speech about, like, yes, misinformation is really, like a severe problem, right?
Yep.
He's like, the internet company should be blocking it. And he wasn't, it's like, if you read articles about this, they mostly are focusing on the vaccine COVID misinformation, which is obviously a big problem. But
it's about everything.
The Surgeon General was talking about he said it's an urgent threat, right? All medical misinformation is an urgent threat to, the safety of humanity, I guess.
And if you take any major right-wing conservative media company in America and look at where they make their money, almost all of them eventually come to rest on the same industry, the fake supplements industry. Mm. In some other news, that is also directly relevant to what we're going to.
More news. Okay.
One more. This is also directly straight up relevant to our main bit, but it's not actually what we're going to talk about today. So a U.S. consumer agency, and there's a whole bunch of other lawsuits around this, but there's a big one now. The federal government, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, is suing Amazon. This is breaking news as of today, like a couple hours ago, to force them to recall a huge number of hazardous products. Amazon has so many products that they're not counterfeits. They're not bootlegs. This is not like a fake hairdryer that from like
a Folex.
Yeah, it's not a Folex. These are just products with brands that you might not recognize because they're not real. Like, it's a shell company. There's probably the same product sold under 100 different brands. But these are things like carbon monoxide detectors that just don't work. Hair dryers that will just kill you if they get wet. Like, they don't have any safety controls in them. Children's sleepwear that says non-flammable, but that are in fact extremely inflammable.
Yeah, I mean, these are things that, technically speaking, customs is supposed to be watching this stuff when it comes in, right? Because almost none of this stuff is manufactured in the U.S. Right?
Nope.
Very, very small amount of it. So your customs is failed here, right? They should have turned this stuff away at the port.
Yep.
But now
Never mind. Amazon should be doing some control and maybe not letting any wacko sell shit on Amazon.
Well, I think that's the other problem is even if you go to a place and eat, a store like a Walmart or a Target or a Best Buy, they're not good stores. They're evil also.
But they won't have just fake shit.
Everything they sell in those stores, there is a person whose job it is. They're called a buyer, right? They buy wholesale goods. That's a job you can have. It's a fun job. I've always wanted it, but it's hard. It's a powerful job also because you basically can choose who makes money and who doesn't. It's a very powerful position. But that person, right? If you work at, say, if they're the buyer for Target, right, and they're buying children's clothes, they're not buying the inflammable clothes.
And if they buy something
that would be the end of them. If
they buy something that says non-flammable and it turns out it is in fact inflammable, then they're going to sue whoever they bought it from.
Target will sue. Yeah. Exactly. Right. Amazon is like, hey, we have a website. Anyone who wants to sell anything, just sign up at our website. Amazon may not ever even see the merchandise. You might just go to the Amazon website, buy something that sends a signal to someone else. That someone else mails you something directly. Amazon has not seen those goods.
Yep.
Right? But yet they are now, I guess, what's the word for when you aid in a crime?
Aiding and abetting.
Yeah.
They're an accomplice.
Right?
Well, here, actually, I can summarize it. The CPSC said that Amazon had to, quote, accept responsibility for these dangerous goods. And this is some dangerous shit if you read the article. Amazon's response was, it is unclear why they have filed a complaint seeking to force us to take actions almost entirely duplicative of those we've already taken, which is obvious corporate bullshit speak because according to the CPSC, Amazon's unilateral actions are insufficient to remediate the hazards posed by the products in question. I hope the USPC or the CSPC comes down on Amazon like a ton of bricks. This isn't just like Amazon should be broken up, but independently, Amazon should be prosecuted for even selling these things in the first place. In my opinion,
there's a lot of things they should be prosecuted. There's a lot of things. A lot of these almost every company. Period. That is successful.
The listener comes through. Amazon is complicit.
Yes. Almost every successful company ever, right, got its start with crimes and then basically gets its shit sorted out later. Crunchyroll started by...
I was about to bring up Crunchyroll.
It's like, almost every... Uber, they just started out by ignoring every taxi law there was. And just ignore all these laws and nobody arrested them for it. And then they got enough money... And then they became a thing, and now you can't, I feel like you should still, if I became in a position of power, I would just arrest the CEO of Uber. I'd be like, you filed, if I was a prosecutor, I guess, I'd have to be a federal prosecutor, and I'd be like, hey, here's all these taxi regulations you've been ignoring for the entire existence of your company. We're going to take you to court over them. No, I don't know why nobody's done this yet.
And I love, if you go to the...
still exist, you're still ignoring them.
And we accept this stuff. If you go to the Wikipedia page about Crunchyroll, under history, the first heading is origins and illegal distribution. The second heading is move to legal distribution.
Yep. I mean, even small businesses, right? It's like, a small business, there's so many laws and regulations and taxes and all sorts of, stuff you have to do. If you do everything by the book correctly, perfectly, and you're starting, say, a restaurant, just out of the gate, you do everything perfectly. Doing everything perfectly costs you so much money, you're just done, right? If you want to start a restaurant, just fucking start slinging food, right? And then when the health inspector comes and gives you the F grade and tries to shut you down, then you fix your shit, right? That's how you get a business actually off the ground.
Which is a problem, obviously.
Right, exactly. So, and this is why, people get credence when they start making arguments for deregulation. They're like, oh, we got to deregulate so people can actually succeed in business.
Yeah, because but no, if you have deregulation, that same thing will happen. But that second heading,
they'll just
the second heading, move to legal. That'll never happen.
Exactly. The restaurant will just keep operating with rat poop in the food forever. Right?
Yep.
It's like you can't,
All right, I think that's enough to get into the next bit. The listener, your podcast hosts are in sync when Rim has started typing Crunchyroll into Google by the time Scott brings up Crunchyroll.
That's all right. That listener clearly has no reason to listen to any more Geek Nights. They already know everything we're going to say.
Yeah, at this point, Geek Nights is just a predictive text engine.
Right. That listener can now go forth, spend the rest of your life doing
I
something
wonder
productive. You
if
don't need
we
to listen to us.
if we fed every single podcast we've ever recorded, like transcripts, like accurate, detailed ones, into a machine learning algorithm, what would the episode it tried to make?
Why can't we just feed the MP3s in?
We could, but the problem is then it's not just trying to string together like a set of words that make sense. It's trying to string together a set of sounds that make sense, which arguably is a more
Siri can
complex
do it.
problem space. To a degree, we
Siri
could
can
try
do
it.
Hmm.
We saw that thing. I got a news I want to talk about a different day about that with a certain famous person's voice in a documentary saying things he never said. All right, anyway. But anyway, things of the day. So, following my theme, this video is called "This Tent Could Kill You: Dangerous Cheap Tent." This is one of those things that like should not be allowed to be sold, but yet is sold because it's cheap. And because I'm getting into camping again, and I had to buy a bunch of new camping stuff, these things are front of mind because I know about camping equipment. I understand like the risks, the dangers, what you need. Kind of like
watched a bunch of YouTube videos about it.
Well, no, I also grew up camping a lot as a kid.
Those YouTube videos know about camping equipment. You just watch YouTube videos.
Well, I also learned this as a kid from like my Cub Scout like den leaders and everything, and I've been camping a bunch.
Okay.
I mean, some of those things haven't changed much. You know what's changed since I was a kid and now? One, people tend to use bear canisters instead of hanging their food from a tree because the ladder doesn't actually really work that well. Two, tents are just better. Like, they're so much better. If you have an old tent, literally throw it away.
That was the thing in old movies. You'd always see someone struggling to set up a tent.
Yep.
And I never understood it because I never set up an old shitty tent. I only ever set up a pretty good tent.
Yep.
In my life. So,
water purification, so much better. When I was a kid, it was you'd put iodine and bleach into the water and then drink it. It tasted like shit. It's so much better now. But this video is a 10-minute long video that takes one of these cheap, no brand, like bullshit fake tents that I wouldn't blame a non-expert for buying. Kind of like a bike. How are you supposed to know a Huffy's a piece of shit if no one told you? And you don't know a lot about bikes. You go to Amazon, you see that Huffy and you think, oh, I need a bike. The specs are good. They read this box. All right, this is a tent. It's waterproof. It says I can camp with it. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to go camping. And this tent is dangerous for like so many reasons. This tent is just like a death trap, and it is terrifying that it is allowed to be sold by anyone. So what do you got?
All right. So I think it's every year, if I'm not mistaken, there is a person in New York City who is called the public advocate, right? They're basically it's a weird position to be in because basically you're not the vice mayor, you're not the deputy mayor, but if the mayor goes down, you're next. And at the same time, you can submit, bills to the city council to vote on, but you can't vote on shit. You can just be like, hey, you guys want to make a law out of this? It's an idea I had. You're also generally, the public advocate is like sort of the opposite of the mayor. Like everyone just loves the fuck out of them. Usually, I've never seen people say bad things too much about any of the public advocates I've had.
I think part of it is that public advocate is a position, like in New York City in particular, where progressive activists who tend to also vote in primaries and vote in elections regularly care a lot, and conservatives, but also uninvolved people don't think about it or even know it exists.
Anyway, so one of the things the public advocate does every once in a while, I think it's annually, is they release a list of the fucking worst landlords in the city, just like a ranking, right? So it's sort of fun, but it's also true. So this dude made this, I guess his YouTube channel says Jeff Seal, right? So I assume that's the person's name. They made a 3-part documentary. It's like a full-on movie, basically. It's very Michael Moore old school style, right?
I like that style. That old style.
Not sort of what Michael Moore became over time, but more of his original kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
Where he goes to find these landlords. So in the movie, he's looking at he's going to the tenants, right? And then he's trying to, confront the landlords. Right. And then he sneaks into the landlord convention. Right. And sort of
the landlord convention.
So, if you want to get mad about how it's legal for someone to own own land, period, and, charge people for shelter, which is necessary for life.
Read about the term rent seeking.
And then to also do a bad job of it. Right. It's like it's one thing to be a landlord, it's another thing to be a bad landlord.
Yep.
Right.
Like slumlord on purpose.
Yep. So you can watch this pretty good documentary here and get mad.
I'm already mad. The only reason I'm okay with my landlord is that I do prefer a corporate landlord as opposed to an individual person, because I have found generally individual people who are doing it as an investment tend to be way more like weirdly aggressively shitty. Companies are a little more afraid of being sued if they're big enough, or a little more like they'll do things more by the book.
Show, I'll tell you something quick about my landlord. Right.
Ah. So yeah, in the meta moment, still reading the Tale of Genji. Genji continues to sleepwalk through life, and yeah, I would have made some different decisions from what Genji has made.
It's the first novel ever written by any human being in the history of literature, period. Anywhere on Earth, the first novel. We still have it. Of what there is of it. We have all of it. You can read it. We're reading it. It's translated into our language so that we can read it. Supposedly, if you were a Japanese person reading it in Japanese, it would be sort of like reading Shakespeare, like it's a really old style language. So it'd be as hard as in English, for someone who speaks current English, like some teenager trying to read Shakespeare. They're going like, what the hell are they saying? It's that kind of thing. But thankfully, it's in English. And the English translation is actually easier to read than a Shakespeare, depending on which one it is. So yeah, it's just long.
Yep.
So
and we will be live
still going there
this weekend on Saturday at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time in the PAX 2 Twitch stream with an all-new Atari game design panel that we recorded a while ago. We gave it to PAX. If you like the overlay and like the aesthetic of the panel, let me know, because I made that myself. PAX didn't make that for me. I spent some time on that. I'm kind of proud of it. If you don't like it, tell Scott so he can make fun of me. And
okay. Speaking of PAX Online, it's happening right now as we speak. If you're watching this live, if you're not watching this live, well, there's going to be VODs of PAX East Online, so you didn't miss anything. But there's a few things. Number one, the keynote, which I didn't watch yet, I'm going to watch the VOD, was by the CEO of Jackbox. So I'm assuming that's a great keynote, just based on that alone, and I'm going to check it out. I might be wrong, though. Who knows? Maybe the CEO of Jackbox is a boring person, but I guess that's possible, but it seems unlikely. Tonight, Thursday the 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, you may also have to watch a VOD of this, too, because that's 1 hour from the time that I'm speaking.
Yeah.
Is a panel in the PAX 2 channel where they are going to rank the best bathrooms in video games. I'm going to watch that live in an hour.
That is so good. What a topic. A+ topic.
Our panel is Saturday, and then the Omegathon final is Sunday, and also Saturday. Our panel's at 1:45, but at 7:30 p.m. on Saturday, there's a Super Art Fight at PAX East Online.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's pre-recorded or not, but if I got nothing to do on 7:30 Saturday, I'm going to be watching that also. Put it on my calendar.
I would bet it's pre-recorded based on other things I know, but not sure. I think there's a few things that might be live at
pre-recorded or not, a Super Art Fight.
Super Art Fight's always a good time.
So, yeah.
Anything you want to foist? I got nothing new today. No one took me up on Ogre.
We're still foisting?
If you have something, we can just move on. The second dibs.
I do. I'll have things. We'll get a dibs next week.
Yeah, we're getting rid of a lot of baseline stuff before we move on to things I want to start. I got to decide if we call it second dibs officially or call it the foisting.
It's called second dibs.
I like foisting, though.
Too bad.
I like to foist things on people in general. It's one of my go-to moves.
Did anyone get your ogre? Does anyone want it?
No, there are people who will want it and third dibs, but these are people who will only get it when it is a time where we will see them in person again. So
but no, you have not had any second dibs requests.
I have not had a second dibs request for the Ogre Big Box.
Well, that's a shame.
Yep, I do have a backup plan for it, though.
Coffee.
So if you want it, let me know. Otherwise, someone else is getting it. Yeah. So counterfeits and bootlegs. It's interesting. Now, what I want to be clear about is what we're not talking about are scams, like things that are just a straight up scam, like on Amazon where you buy one time kind of hard drive, they send you a different hard drive.
I think if we just say what a counterfeit and a bootleg is and just say anything that's not that is not what we're talking about, right? So a counterfeit or a bootleg is when you're, at least in the year 2020, we're not talking about, running whiskey up from who knows where, right?
Yeah.
That kind of bootleg, right? A counterfeit / bootleg in the year 2021 is when you are selling, a one good, right? But actually you are not getting the good you think you're getting, right? You're getting the good perhaps manufactured by someone else, right? So, for example, you tried to buy. I always remember this. I was in Israel in the year 2000, and in the store there was a Discman, or was it some headphones? Maybe it was Discman with headphones. Doesn't matter. And it said on the package, literally, Panasonic. It literally said Panasonic, right? So that is a bootleg. You trick someone. They think they're buying Panasonic, but if they're really foolish and they don't look closely, I guess they're getting Panasonic. Right? So today, this is a much more insidious problem with e-commerce because you are not there at the time of purchase to verify the goods before you hand over the money. So, and people have gotten wise, and they don't sell a Panasonic. You look at it, and it says fucking Panasonic on it. Right?
Yep.
It's like, it's like you would need a really discerning eye to know that it's not what it says it is, that it was not made by the Panasonic Corporation, that it was made by someone else, and that it is usually going to be made at inferior quality, right? Usually at a lower price point, but not that low, just lower than the official goods. Sometimes it's the same price as the official goods. Now you're fooled even more.
Yeah.
Right?
And these are the kinds of things that honestly, I'm angrier about this than I am about all the other orthogonally adjacent things we could talk about, because this not only could harm the person buying, but it can also harm the person making the real thing.
It also harms the person. Yeah, the person who makes the real thing is harmed. The person who buys the thing is harmed, right? And the people selling the thing are probably exploited and harmed also. It's really just
I got a straight up counterfeit battery on Amazon once. It said Panasonic on it. I bought a Panasonic battery, looked like a Panasonic, said it was a Panasonic. It failed on me almost immediately. And I tried to do like a return warrant, like I did a service request warranty thing with Panasonic. And they were like, that serial number is just fake. That's not our battery.
Yep. Tough shit. Go complain to where you bought it.
Yep. Complain to Amazon because it's always Amazon.
It always is. Well, partially it's because Amazon, I don't know what the status of this is now, but
well, there was that inventory mixing where they'd mix all the inventory together.
Inventory mixing, right? So let's say, if they still do this, I'm not aware, but the way it worked was like Amazon sells, I don't know, fucking Panasonic headphone, right? And let's say you have a Panasonic headphone that's mint in box and you want to sell it. So you send it to Amazon, right? And they, don't separate the one you sent them from the legit ones. They just mix them all in. And if anyone buys one, they might have bought yours, right? They might have bought one of the stock ones. You don't know. But it's like if they click on the Amazon website on your store, you get the money. But the inventory they actually get delivered to them could be the one you sent them. It could be a different one because Amazon's like, well, they're all the same product. What does it matter if it's the one Scott sent us or the one that we ordered, right? It's all the same thing. We'll just mix them all together. And what happened was people sent bootleg things to Amazon and they got mixed in with the real things.
Yep.
So it didn't matter if you bought them from bootleg store on Amazon when you were looking at the seller and the list of sellers, right? Which you can choose the seller, or if you bought them from Amazon directly, because the bootlegs got mixed in with the real shit. And so,
Yep.
you only know you got a bootleg if you're the kind of person who can tell the difference. It's a big problem in the board game world now.
Yep. Actually, I was going to use that as a news
world.
on our next Tuesday show because there's big movements in the counterfeit board game market lately. There's a bunch of news around that.
But yeah, board games, people will just be like, at the factory, it's like, okay, we know we're printing out these board games and we notice we're selling a lot of them. We're sending a bunch of these over. It's like, well, it's just a bunch of JPEGs. Let's just print them in this other printing facility, lower quality, cheaper, and sell those, right? It's like we don't care about the intellectual property law or
even just I have a factory that could make board games. Download some scans of a game that's popular and just start selling the game.
Yeah, and it's like people go online and they don't know that much about the board game world. They're not super fans. They just type in this game they want to buy. They see my listing. They see the price is lower on this site. They click buy and they end up with a copy that was not made by the person who actually made the game. The person who actually made the game made no money on this transaction.
Yep.
The money went to this other person. And the person who bought it got an inferior copy that's, not as good as the legit one.
I remember when I was in high school, I got a counterfeit $20 bill like just like I had a counterfeit 20. And I wasn't sure. I was debating what to do with it. And from what I could tell, if I had reported it to the government, they would have taken it and I would have been out $20. So
Secret Service, the Secret
so
Service handles that.
what I did, statute of limitations, I'm sure, assuming is long expired, is I just used it somewhere knowing it was a counterfeit because I didn't want to deal with it and I didn't trust that I would get my $20 back otherwise.
I mean, it's entirely possible that, like, you know, I guess I get most of my 20s from ATMs, but it's possible I could have gotten, which is very unlikely to be counterfeit, but it's possible I could have gotten one as change somewhere that happened to be counterfeit and then used it because it's not like I'm fucking checking. Right? But I've never knowingly had one that wasn't just like
in high school. I had a knowing, obvious counterfeit $20 bill that I got somewhere, like in the course of getting cash from someone or a transaction, and I had to get rid of it. There's really no recourse. You're just SOL.
Yep. Unless you can find the person who gave it to you and be like, hey.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's just in my wallet. Like, great.
Yeah, well, you report them. They're the ones who get busted, right?
Yep. But it's interesting because there were some goods over the course of my life where I would maybe get a counterfeit on purpose. Like, if I not now, but say I wanted a fancy Rolex style watch. Fake Rolex, just as good as a real Rolex if you're only trying to impress people who aren't going to look at it too closely. Like, to be perfectly real.
Like, I've gone on YouTube, right? And I can, I see these videos comparing real ones to fake ones, and they're really close. You can see the differences when they zoom in with their, their jeweler's loops and stuff and show you, and you're like, oh yeah, I can see that the real one is superior in these ways. But it's like, if you're just wearing it, you will never fucking know, right? No one, and anyone else who doesn't bring out their jeweler's loop isn't going to fucking know either. And the price of the real one is tens of thousands of dollars, and the price of the fake one is hundreds or maybe ones of thousands of dollars. And that's why I still won't buy the fake one, because it's still too much money for for just something only tells time, to pay more than I pay for an Apple Watch, which not only tells time, but does fucking 10 billion other things. That's ridiculous. But it's like, yeah, obviously, if you just want the thing that fucking tells time, it's like, sure, there is some legitimacy to the high price of the real Rolex. It's a handcrafted, possibly made of valuable gold, platinum, who knows, right? Precise mechanical device. And that is indeed worthy of a high price.
But I do believe usually
price is perhaps maybe too high.
But usually too, the kind of person who buys a counterfeit Rolex probably knows it's a counterfeit and is doing it on purpose, because that seems like it would make sense. Like, oh yeah, here's a Rolex, $500. Nobody thinks that's a real Rolex when they buy it.
No, I mean, look how many people go down to Chinatown and they buy counterfeit handbag, right? And it's like, why?
Yeah.
It's because
if you follow the guy who's just muttering Rolex, Rolex, Rolex under his breath, you know exactly what you're about to do.
Right. And the thing is, the counterfeit handbag is like, people buy it because it's like, you can't go to the real store and get they want a handbag that looks like that is in that shape, possibly with that logo on it, right? And the real store only has one at real price. So you go to a shady place, and the counterfeit handbag holds things just fine. There's nothing wrong. It's not like a counterfeit battery that explodes on you or doesn't work, right? It's that the legitimate good is ridiculously overpriced. It's like, yes, they deserve some money for the design they've done, right? And the work they've put into marketing their trademark value, right? It's like, there's a reason you want their brand. They did work to make their brand desired, right? And they deserve some compensation for that. But do you deserve $10,000 for a fucking bag? No. There's no bag on earth, right? That is just a bag that doesn't, like, I don't know, clean your kitchen for you, right? That should cost $10,000. Right?
Now,
it's just ridiculous.
I think we're a lot in, like, the average GeekNights listener runs into counterfeits, is especially, not as much lately, but before streaming was a thing, anime bootlegs were real common. Like, there were fan subs, sure, separate bucket, let's just bucket those aside. There were legitimate releases, which were $20 to $40 per VHS tape, if you were lucky. And then there were the, like, bootlegs that were sold even sometimes in stores that pretended to be a DVD or VHS box set of an anime, but were just fucking straight up counterfeits. And they were usually also very low quality. Well, we had that Planetest bootleg that the subtitles just peter out after the first 5 or 6 episodes.
Yeah, sometimes the bootlegs were, it's like, hey, you could buy the legit thing, right, which is higher quality, right? And this is just trying to trick you out of your money, right? It's like, it's like you could tell one booth at the Anime Con has a box set for $200, right? When that was still a thing.
Yep.
And the other one has a box set for $20. And it's like,
But I guess what always fascinated me about anime fans in particular in that era was that so many people would buy those bootlegs seemingly earnestly thinking they were legitimate and they just got a good deal. Like it was kind of a thing, and it always bothered me.
People don't know. That's why bootlegs continue, because people don't know.
But then you look at these things, and it's like, wow, that the cover on this DVD box is clearly
people don't look.
An 8.5 by 11 piece of like laser printed paper.
There are some people who know, like us, right, who are paying attention to detail, right, and like researching and focusing and examining and whatnot, and some people just aren't, right? They just don't notice. You pointed out to them, and they're like, "Whoa, I didn't notice that," because they don't look closely.
Yeah,
right? They're not focused. They're just sort of coasting through, this process. Right, without we're hyper examining every single thing we do.
Well, I think it's more simple. You should be suspicious of something that seems like it's too good of a deal. Like that seems to be.
Aren't suspicious in life in general.
Yeah,
we're suspicious of everything, even things that are legit.
Case in point, if an email that I get has like the slightest whiff of being a scam, it just gets deleted immediately.
Today they announced that handheld Steam thing, and what's our first reaction? Is this real? That looks like it's fake.
Yep.
Right. First reaction, and then it's like, no, it's real. Right. It's like it is real.
Yeah.
But our first instinct is always, everything is fake, everything is bullshit, that's a lie, that can't be real, I'm checking this, right? And not everyone has that we have, and that you can't always get it either if you don't have it already.
And that's why I definitely separate someone who seeks out counterfeit goods because they're cheaper from someone who unknowingly ends up with a counterfeit good, especially if they paid full retail price for that thing, like that battery that I bought.
Yeah, it's like, and it's buying.
The battery was like $70. I was pissed.
Yeah, but it's like the watch in the bag. It's like, that's okay, right? There's like almost legitimate reason there, right? There's another. Speaking of the DVDs, another legitimate reason. Getting something that's just not available where you are, which isn't an issue anymore with the internet. But it's like we would get bootleg Attack the Gas Station. Why? Because there was no legitimate Attack the Gas Station.
But we knew. We went in eyes open. I am buying a bootleg. This is just piracy in a less digital way.
Yeah, but there wasn't another option though, right? It's like you're providing the bootleg service is the only service we can get, and in other parts of the world, right? It's like we're in the New York City, right? Legitimate goods of everything are basically available here, right? Pretty much, if we have the money, right, we could go and get pretty much any legitimate good if we're willing to wait in a line at the appropriate store, right? But it's like some people, you live in a place, most of the world, even United States, some goods not available, right? The thing you want, you can't get. It was a limited thing. It was it's like, you would need a ridiculous amount of money to get it where you are because no one ships it there.
Yep.
Right? And it's like, and if someone's making a bootleg one that functions, right, then I guess if it doesn't function at all, that's not good for you. But it's like, bootleg one's the only one you're gonna get. It's like, okay, why wouldn't you do that, right? Rather than have nothing.
Yep. Because it gets into sort of this broader, like there's another topic for a future show around things that are not technically bootlegs. They're just knockoffs, but they're not violating any laws otherwise. They're just a knockoff of something.
Right.
That's a whole different ball game.
Right, I've got here a Shure SM57 microphone, right? So let's say I live somewhere where I can't just order one online easily, and I want a microphone. Well, it's like there could be a microphone that looks a lot like this and says Shure SM57 on it, but wasn't made by the Shure Corporation.
Yeah.
And how, there might be another one that looks like this and functions like this, but doesn't say Shure on it. It just says like microphone on it, right? They just maybe copied the design or something. And then there could just be like, I don't know, some other microphone, right? So it's like, which one do you buy? The legit one isn't available, and the legit one, if it was available, would be the most expensive. If you don't need the legit one, right? It's like, I guess, the one that says Shure on it has some questionability to it, right? Because there's sort of, right, taking advantage. The Shure Corporation could arguably be harmed. They're definitely legally speaking.
Yep, yep. That's the last point I want to touch on with brands. We'll get back to that.
Morally, gray area, right? But the other two, it's like, what's the moral gray area in the other two? It's like, hopefully, that you just need a microphone, right? Does this one work? It's like, okay.
Ooh,
right?
the listener actually had a really good, they framed this pretty well. I actually want to read what they typed here. Blah, blah, blah. If a movie isn't available anywhere, a pirate becomes a curator.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. Yeah.
But I guess what this comes down to is that, especially with all the other types of scams we're not talking about today and knockoffs and everything, there was a time where brands were almost overrated. And then we got to this period where brands are kind of very important now because a brand implies that there is accountability. There's someone the government or you can go after if a product harms you in some way or is inadequate in some way. Or if there isn't, like if the brand sucks, at least you can know where that thing came from. Like knowing this is a real Shure microphone versus a knockoff that looks like a Shure microphone. That's real important in a society where if I type microphone in Amazon, there's a million things that look like they're complete pieces of shit and no one would know otherwise. I'm a professional. I would choose to buy the brand that I trust because of that accountability and my trust of that brand.
Sure. I mean, but not accounting for the fact that someone might put a brand on something that's bootleg, right? It's not actually the
But
brand
at that point, that's why...
But forgetting that, right? Back in the day, right? In the olden days, probably even within our lives, like maybe the 80s or earlier, when something had a brand on it, you knew, like it was like almost 100% guaranteed that that company that with that brand label made that thing.
Yep.
Right? Nowadays, right, there is legitimate rebranding run rampant, right? You buy something and it says a legitimate brand name on it. It's sold in the store, the legitimate retail store of that brand. It is not a bootleg, but that company did not make that thing. They bought that thing from some other no-name place and they slapped their brand on it.
Now, ideally, if those
label product line.
Now, ideally, if those are low-tier goods, then they're degrading the quality of that brand over time.
Sure, possibly. But it doesn't. It still is like the brand there. It's like it's the real brand on a product that that brand is really selling, but they didn't make it.
Yep.
So you're not real. It's not
well.
Really
they're at least they're officially with a paper trail vouching for it in some way, which is a step above buying the Sony.
Possibly, yes. But it's still not a phenomenon that has always been around. I feel like if you go back, there was a time in last century.
Well, there was the opposite. There was
wasn't as big of a thing.
Or look at cereal, where there'd be the generic cereal that is literally the same cereal just without the brand name on it. Like that was the era where I would seek out non-branded things because they were the same as the branded things, just cheaper. Now I'm almost at the point where not only do I seek out brands that I know and to a degree trust. That to a degree, because it's capitalism, you can't really trust anyone. But also, I honestly, unless something is like bottom tier or like local goods or groceries, like really simple stuff, I buy almost everything if I can direct from the manufacturer or direct from the brand via their e-commerce platform. And I really try to avoid buying things from marketplaces of any kind, including Amazon. Like when I buy Shure stuff, I buy it direct from Shure, or I buy it from a company like Sweetwater that like specializes in audio gear.
There are certain specialized retailers out there that have like these, online that have very close, they're like industry retailers for certain kinds of goods.
Yep.
And they have very close relationships with the actual manufacturers.
Like Sweetwater is an example, not to plug them, but that is where I buy audio equipment from.
Yeah. So for example, like in the camera world, right? You have B&H where you shouldn't buy anything from, right? I don't support them. But then there's like Adorama is another one. What's another one? There's the Camera Store in Chicago. I think that's where they are. I don't know. But there's a few of these like online camera stores that have very close relationships with Sony, Canon, Nikon, right? Panasonic, Fuji, everyone, right? And like those places are only selling legitimate goods. They're legit retailers of the thing. And sometimes those like they'll have their own website, of course, with their own e-commerce. But sometimes you go on Amazon and you'll see that you're actually buying from one of those stores.
Yep.
Right. And that's actually a safe purchase. Of
Well,
course, you just
well,
give
to a degree, because depending,
Bezos money for no reason. Why don't you just go through to the real store?
but also
you
depending,
are going to be getting legitimate goods if you
depending on how much commingling of inventory still happens, that might not guarantee your safety.
No, if you see one of those stores as like the seller, you're actually going to get it shipped. It'll ship from that store.
I don't know if that's true in all cases, to be honest.
It's in my every time I've done it, I've gotten a package that was clearly from the store, like with their tape on it, not even Amazon's tape on it.
Ah.
So
So that battery had the Panasonic tape on it, which was extra funny, like on the little box.
Ooh. But yeah, that's a thing. So there are retailers that are like industry retailers that can be trusted to always carry industry goods. Like Newegg, for example, as long as you always buy first party from Newegg and not from some other seller who's listing things on Newegg, you're going to be getting legit goods, right? Newegg doesn't have, EXGA video cards.
Yeah.
They have EVG, right? But there could be a third-party seller on Newegg. You got to watch out for that.
But honestly, the best way to go if you can is to always buy direct, and direct-to-consumer brands are actually growing in, not just like entirely direct-to-consumer brands are growing, but also brands that previously would make a lot of relationships with retailers and would not sell directly because they were afraid of poisoning that well. They've started to sell direct, partly to avoid all these problems we talked about because we live in a capitalist hellscape, and partly, why even have that middleman there? It's not that expensive to run an e-commerce platform if you're even like a middling-sized company.
Yeah, it's like I'm seeing, like I look around the city. Like I was just in Manhattan to go to the dentist, and I biked around, right? And it's like, the stores for like sneakers are still huge, right? So Foot Locker, those kind of places, still in business. But the lines for the shoes are at the Nike store. There's no line for shoes at a Foot Locker, right? They don't have that limited edition thing there, right? And now it's like a Nike store that's like just that didn't exist when I was a kid, right? It was either Foot Locker or Foot Action USA. There was sneaker store. There was not this sort of direct, like there was no Reebok store or Adidas mall, right? Now that's a thing everywhere. The brand just has its own fucking store. Even brick and mortar, forgetting the internet, they just have their own goddamn store, right? Selling their own goods.
Yep.
You're getting the real thing there, and people are going to those stores more than going to.
And I think that is caused by these two things we just mentioned. One, cut out a middleman who's just rent seeking, talking about landlords earlier. And two, trying to get out of the hellscape of the bootleg ecosystem that's growing and growing and growing right now.
Great example, Apple Store, right? They're just like, fuck this Comp USA bullshit, just fucking Apple Store, done, right?
Yep, Microsoft has the Microsoft Store.
Whenever I buy an Apple thing, I just buy it. There's an app you can get for any Apple device. There's an Apple Store app that like does fancy stuff if you walk into an Apple store, like let you buy stuff and just walk out. But you can just at home open up the Apple Store app and buy any Apple product, and then it will show up at your house.
Yep. My laptop, my laptop, the Surface, I bought it directly from Microsoft.
Yep, exactly. So that's how I do.
And I think that was a fine show.